culpable do you think the tech companies are in this?
The tech companies have a huge responsibility. They are, this can't be stressed enough, they are making money from our madness. Their business model relies on us seeking out and destroying the errant opinion in our society. It's a disgusting business model, and we've all fallen into the trap. You know, every hour that we spend online piling in on somebody because, wow, some people have different opinions. Every hour we spend doing that, we add to the recrimination in our culture. And the only other thing we add to is the pockets of the tech companies. We need to rethink this. We need to think, are we being the people we actually want to be? Or are we playing a game that Silicon Valley, under the pretense that it is merely doing good, is actually doing something that's driving us mad?
To take an example then, Sam Smith came out and he said that he would like to be viewed as non-binary. That's how he identifies. You wrote a column about it, something which you posted on Twitter, and you know, drove a lot of engagement on Twitter. You could posit actually that you're very good at playing the game that the social media companies want to play.
Well, I actually don't engage on social media. I use Twitter as a publishing platform. I write pieces and I appear on television and whatever, and I alert readers to it via Twitter. I do almost no engagement on Twitter because I worked out pretty much early on that it wasn't going to show me in my best light because it didn't show anyone in their best light. So I avoided it. But yeah, that particular issue, well, that's a very interesting issue, and I'm a little out there on it because...
Vociferous in that column.
Vociferous, yeah, sure. Well, because I don't think that non-binary exists. Or at least persuade me, you know? Don't tell me it exists. Persuade me it exists. And I've had nobody in the almost week since I wrote that column even attempt to persuade me. You see, here are some of the questions. What's the difference between what he said he was before, which was genderqueer, and being non-binary? I don't think there is a difference. Persuade me. If I wanted to play the game that the identity politics people play, I would say this is offensive to me as a gay man. I would say he is disappearing gay people. All of that are plausible, I think rather pitiful claims to make. But that's actually not the problem I have with this. The problem I have with it, among other things, is no one has explained to me the difference between coming out as genderqueer or non-binary and just saying, look at me, pay me attention. And I don't think that sex is an abstract thing. I don't think being a woman and being a man is something that you perform, as one of the maddening claims of our time is. I think that chromosomes matter. They are.
Once again, some absolutely great insight from Douglas Murray. And I have to give credit to the interviewer here. You know, Douglas went on, he's talking about social media and how, you know, it's a cesspool and allows the mob to basically descend onto social media, sort of be almost invisible in a way, because, you know, you can go ahead and put people down, you can, you know, strike out at people, and you don't have to be physically in front of them, but you still have that mob mentality when somebody tweets something out there and you get in that Twitter war, as they call it. So the moderator, and Douglas is basically saying that, you know, he's tried to sort of, you know, stay away from that. He's sort of seen what the social media platform can do. So the moderator or the interviewer asks him and says, well, you know what, Douglas, you wrote that piece about Sam Harris about coming out binary, and you put something out there. Do you think that you're contributing to the fact of big tech companies in terms of making money off of this, you know, disuniting of people, this mob mentality that they're basically pitting each other against? And Douglas came out with his answer. He said, listen, I didn't really realize this or whatever, but he says, I don't really engage that much on Twitter in terms of, back and forth with people. But the fact that I put out my articles and excerpts and those kind of things, this one obviously hit a raw nerve. But then Douglas is talking about, that's it. Show me. Scientifically explain to me what you're talking about. Biologically, do it. Don't just tell me. Don't just shout at me. Let's sit down, have a discussion, and tell me, what does it mean that yesterday you said you were genderqueer, and today you say you're binary, and tomorrow you'll say you're, pansexual. Explain to me in definitive terms, what does that mean? What does that encompass? If you can't persuade me to your chance just by sitting down and talking, then you have no credible ground to stand on. It's literally quicksand and you're sinking. And as you're sinking, you're shouting to me to save you, to look at you. Now I'll help you out of the quicksand and save you in that regards. But I'm not going to save you from the words that you're using to describe yourself, because they change in meaning each and every day, and you're changing language because you feel that language can be changed. Language is malleable, just as sex is malleable. I'm sorry. That's not something that I'm not going to do. Anyways, folks, this is what we have on tap for you today. We're going to get more with Douglas in his interview. You're watching the Dr. Nasir Shaikh Show. I'm your host. My name is Dr. Nasir. I give you my political prescription from my political perspective of what's happening when things collide in this world, like Douglas Murray, big tech companies, social media, politics, religion, culture, immigration. They all come crashing together. Let's get to more of the interview with Douglas Murray right now.
Thing that matter in our lives, but they definitely matter.
What about politeness?
Politeness matters too, but here's the thing. I'm not going to mutilate the language because of something you feel today. So if I said to you, I feel like a space hopper today, and you've got to refer to me as such, and also say that no such thing as sex exists, would you do it?
That's one extreme. I would counter.
It's not that extreme.
Well, no, but let's go to the other end of the scale. Let's say, let's say someone's called John. He's named John after his father.
Mm-hmm.
His father abuses him.
Mm-hmm.
Later in life, he no longer wishes to be known as John.
Mm-hmm.
He wishes to be known by his middle name. Let's say it's Douglas or Ollie, whatever.
Sure.
Would you accept that? Would you say, you know what, I'll no longer call you John?
Of course.
What's the difference between that and asking to be known as non-binary?
If that person said, and you have to pretend that I was called my new name on my birth certificate, that invites me into a lie, okay? Mm-hmm. It wouldn't be the biggest thing in the world, by the way, in that case. But if they said, look, I'm now called Ollie, and I was always called Ollie, and don't you dare pretend, even if you find my birth certificate and it says John on it, don't pretend it doesn't say Ollie. Mm-hmm. Do I agree to the little lie or not? And you see, my belief is that we are being invited in to join in little lies. And some of it is annoying, some of it is unimportant. Some people say that mutilating the language and doing they, them instead of he, him is no particular problem. And when I say, I went to they concert and them was good or whatever, so that's no problem. I think it's at the very least presumptuous to do that, particularly presumptuous to do that if you haven't even worked out or argued what it is. Sam Smith says, by the way, in that thing, I don't know what it is to be non-binary. I look forward to the day I can come back and explain. In the meantime, all change the language whilst you're waiting for me. But that's not the bit that bothers me about it, especially. The bit that bothers me is I don't like lies. I just don't like them. My view on the trans thing, for instance, is I always say, I do call people by the name they ask me to call them, sure. But I won't then pretend, as I say, that chromosomes don't exist. And why I say this, and why I'm one of these people who on this ends up getting grief for this, but it's worth it, is because I know from societies that have gone wrong, that one of the ways in which societies go wrong is when lies become embedded. And in a way, it matters less how big the lie is to begin with. But it matters because lies are profoundly demoralizing. I've traveled all across the world. I've seen some unbelievable sites and places and societies that have gone so badly wrong. North Korea, for instance. And we don't live in a North Korea, obviously. But when you see a truly destroyed society, one of the things that is always at the root of it is that the population have to agree to things they know aren't true. Because if you agree to the thing that you know isn't true today, you will agree to another set of untruths tomorrow. None of this is to say be unpleasant to people. Obviously not. Obviously not. But don't demand that we agree to things we don't think are true. Or at the very least, let's discuss it. Don't shut it down.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, what Douglas is talking about is the same thing that I say all the time. I say this to my kids too when we talk about these subjects. And I say, sometimes my kids will say, Dad, so what? I mean, if somebody wants to, change the way they're saying something or just call them by a pronoun, I mean, instead of arguing and fighting and whatever, why don't you just go ahead and say they, them, or he, his, or they, thou, whatever. And I basically tell them, I said, look, it's not the fact that you can't say that. You could just go ahead, go along with it, so to speak. But that going along, how many times do you go along? Once you go along and you give in, you've ceded the ground. All right, you've ceded territory. How do you reclaim that territory back? It's very difficult because they'll say, but you said it before. You said it was okay then. Now, what do you go back on? Unless now you have to go back to say, well, I was, you know what? And you can, but now, you're backpedaling in a way. You're on the defense. Instead, the thing is that these are tiny little lies or medium lies or big lies. A lie is a lie. Well, I guess some people say there's fiblets. There's little white lies. These are little unnatural lies that will expand, metastasize into even larger ones that we can't come back from then. If we change the history of our language, if we change the lingo, if we change the meaning of words, what do we have then for communication going forward? If up really means down, then what does down mean? If man equals woman, what does woman mean? If woman equals man, what does man mean? That's the thing. Where are we going with this? Just because we say something doesn't mean that it's true. There has to be some scientific basis, some scientific fact. Biological nomenclature means something. Chromosomes do matter. Oh, if you want to, you can just say whatever you want. That doesn't mean that it is. That doesn't mean that it should be. And that's what Douglas is trying to point out here. And that's something that I try to point out every time when we have a discussion about trans issues, transgenderism, trans women, trans men, binary, how many genders are there? That we are entering into the world of delusion. And we're entering into the world of collusion with the cult of transgenderism, with the church of transgenderism. The left hates the dogma of religion. They don't want that anywhere near them at all. But the same conditions, the same things that they talk about, people are believing in something that tangibly nobody can see. You're taking it on faith. They're using the same logic of religion for the church of transgenderism. And then when we look at it and we use their same arguments as they do, they're like, oh, wait a minute, you're transphobic, you're a bigot, you're a bigot, you're a racist. It's amazing the way that they just flipped it around and turn it around. And that's exactly what happens, folks. You cannot let these little lies go. Now, that doesn't mean that you've got to be belligerent about it or get mad, yell, scream, shout, whatever. All you got to do is, I'm just, you know what? Very calmly, casually. I'm sorry. The only pronouns I know are X and Y and XX. Those are my pronouns. And those are my pronouns. So why are you getting upset with me? You want me to accept your pronouns? These are mine. Let me accept my pronouns, you accept your pronouns. Anyways, folks, we appreciate you taking the time to watch. You've been watching the Dr. Nasir Shaikh Show. I've been your host. My name is Dr. Nasir, and if you haven't done so already, we'd love for you to subscribe to the channel. If you found the content something that you really like to watch, we'd like to share your comments. Put them down below. Let everybody know what you think. Are you for or against? What do you think of Douglas's talk? I'll leave with my final thought, which is, before that, check out our other video links above and below. My final thought is always, when you're right, and when you're left, you're wrong. Until next time, folks, take care and stay safe.